Ladies and gentlemen, good morning. It gives me great pleasure to welcome you all to the second day of the first Global Project Management Forum, the future of project management, digitalizing and adapting to change sustainability, innovation, and inclusion. Day one saw representatives from the government officials, C-level executives, business experts, and notable representatives from local and international organizations. We look forward to the day two with more information and discussions for fruitful outcome. We'd like to once again thank our sponsor, Public Investment Fund, Diamond sponsor, NISMA and partners, Gold sponsor, Line Water Conversion Corporation, and our partner, Saudi Contractors Authority, and our silver sponsor, Orascom Construction, and our associate sponsor, White Helmet Association sponsor, or associate sponsor, GGC Consulting, and our partner, Social Development Bank, and our hospitality partner, Fairmont Hotel. This event would not have been possible without their generous support in driving the vision of this event. Ladies and gentlemen, housekeeping rules once again for your kind attention. We request your generous attention and active participation in this engaging event. If you have any questions for our speakers, please do feel free to ask your questions after the session. You can ask for the mics, our hosts will give you the mics. I wish you all a very productive day ahead and hope you benefit from these sessions and do pay special attention to networking with others during the breaks. Opening day two of the conference is Dr. Ricardo Vergas, Chief Executive Officer, Macro Solutions. Mr. Vergas, welcome back to the stage. Please join me in welcoming him to the stage.
Good morning, everyone. I'm really excited to be back on stage and now to talk more about the mega project ecosystem. And I will try to do my best to cover several different topics in the next 25 minutes. So I want to start by, we did 2 days ago a very fruitful discussion about giga projects and mega projects. And I know that if I start asking you now, what is a mega project? There is a good chance that you will come with potentially different answers. For some of you, a mega project is based on value or it's based on impact. So what I want to show you on this slide that there are some commonalities when we talk about these really large projects. And if we take a look, we are talking about a really massive level of complexity. We are talking about relevant amount of investment. We are talking usually very large and long time scale for that kind of business. For example, we are talking, if it's an infrastructure, we are talking about years. If it's a technology, and I know that some people may challenge, is there a mega project in technology? But if there is a mega project in technology, it will take longer than a traditional normal scale project. Also, we are talking about ESG, we are talking about sustainability aspects that Joe Cahill said a lot about PMI yesterday. And last but not least, all these very large projects, they share two important commonalities. They shape the culture and they provide a massive impact for the society, for the company, and for the sector. But if I can bring all these items to a single concept that we need to work on, this concept would be fragility. And I know that probably many of you will think, but it's so large. We have so much amount of money, so many resources. Why it's fragile? Because it's so complex, it's so big, it's so unique that you need to handle the fragility and how you can bring more resilience to this kind of mega projects. And this comes to the central point of what I want to talk to you. So basically, I want to discuss with you 3 topics. If we are able to understand the dynamic of the ecosystem on these 3 topics, governance, the programmatic approach, and technology. And if we know how these 3 pieces combine and talk to each other, you can really make a difference by handling these large projects. So what I want to start is I want to talk about governance. And I want to share with you some comments about governance that are very important. And the first one is that there is a permanent fight in all project management arena between control and freedom to deliver. On one side, because these projects are so big, these projects, they represent a massive impact. What do people want? People want control, right? For example, if it's a public project or if it's a large sector project, you really need to control, because if things go wrong, they can go badly, really bad. But at the same time, when you put control, you automatically remove the freedom to speed up and deliver. So what is important? It's very important that we find ways of balance these 2 topics. And I want to share with you one example of that. And this example is Volkswagen. During my time leading Brightline in 2018, we did a research trying to understand why so many ideas failed to become a reality. And one of the most impressive case studies, you can download it at EMI.org and Brightline.org, it's the Volkswagen case. And what was the answer Volkswagen did for this very large, complex environment? It's what they call the 2-speed engine. What is a 2-speed engine? They said, okay, some pieces of our business and our area, we will work in a more controlled environment, in some ways predictable and incremental delivery. Other parts of the business, they will be completely free and disruptive. So it's like having an engine that is able to perform 2 speeds. What I want to mean by that on the governance side is that when you have these very large projects, it's not one size fits all in terms of governance. So you need to say, okay, in these pieces of this mega project or this giga project, I will provide a governance system that is more flexible. On the other side, I need to have control mechanisms. What is really true today is that there is no way you can have one way of controlling such a complex endeavor. So you need to adapt the governance system to the different situations. The second aspect I want is that there is a big trend today. I first saw this in something like 2010, 2009. It's called the concept of management by exception. And this is a way of moving this pendulum from control to a little bit more freedom, because it's very easy for us to go extremes. It's not very easy to be more at the center. So the management by exception, it's something that I use a lot in mega projects. It means if everything is okay, you don't need to report. We don't need to meet every week to see the status, or every month to say everything is okay, is according to plan. So management by exception means you only act when there is a variation that is outside your control zone. So by doing that, you reduce dramatically the burden of control without bringing to the chaotic, flexible, where people can do everything. So this is a very big trend and something that reduces dramatically the complexity of the management of these large projects. The other one I want to share with you, it's very important that sometimes governance, you have the freedom to decide if it's a private and you are leading this private endeavor. However, if it's a public-private partnership, there are governance mechanisms that you are not free to choose. There is a lot of regulations, there is a lot of legal aspects that will bring you more towards that control area that will reduce your flexibility on that side. Another aspect that is very important is the cultural aspect. When I say cultural aspect, I was preparing this yesterday night, so this was the image that I found to reflect that. But it's the culture of the organization, the culture of that sector, that very specific sector that you need to understand in terms of governance. Because many times culture shapes the way we govern our projects. So, for example, I'm fortunate of having been in many countries. And it's very common that different countries, they have a different decision, mental model for decision. They have a different ways of meeting. They have some rules and protocols that are based on their culture. And we need to understand that when we talk about the standalone of control and freedom. The second aspect I want to talk is that, okay, if you address the governance, one of the key pieces that I said is the two-speed engine, this balance, and then you need to reflect this governance model on your programmatic approach, on how you plan this mega project. And I want to give you some insights on that. The first one is, if you ask me, Ricardo, what is the biggest challenge of this ultra-large project? It's not necessarily the technology, it's not necessarily legal requirements, it's basically coordination and integration. It's how you imagine a large puzzle, it's how you bring all these thousands of pieces together in a rational way. And this orchestration, it's something like how I connect logistics with the legal requirements, with the technology, with all the supply chain, to have something like NEOM built in Saudi Arabia. It's such a complex endeavor, this coordination, that the programmatic approach must reflect that. And I want to share with you 3 comments I want you to leave this session thinking about. The first one, that is probably, in my opinion, one of the most underutilized methods I have ever seen, and it's so great. It's called system thinking and system dynamics. System dynamic is the mathematical modeling to do system thinking. Let me explain to you in a very simple way what system thinking is. You analyze, like in this chart, the relationship between pieces of your mega project. For example, maybe one piece of your mega project reinforces the other piece and contributes for you to speed up and reduce the risk of the other part. Some of them are the opposite. For example, by moving fast here, you create problems there. And in order to increase this, you need to use a dynamic like system thinking. In system thinking, work on this integration, knowing which kind of positive contribution, negative contribution. And by doing that, you simulate the potential arrangements between the pieces of your mega project. For example, if your mega project is an oil refinery, what is the best way to structure, for example, all the technology and all the instruments so they can be together at the same time? At the same time. So how you can coordinate that? And you use this kind of model to do that. There is a lot of algorithms about that. The second one, you already saw this before. It's when you are handling these ultra-large projects. Planning in advance is absolutely critical. This is one of my favorite charts. And this is not a new one. It's on the root of front-ended loading planning. That is very common for large projects. And what is the idea? The simple idea here. It's even if you fail on the way you execute, if you plan, the variation will go on this green line. If you don't plan, it will go on the blue side. And this is basically what IPA does in all the projects. And this is the second part. It's very important when you are working with large projects to do a lot of scenario planning and do that. And this drives me to my third topic, and probably the topic that for many of you can be in some ways new. And this is what I'm talking about, modularization and clustering. And this is a K-model simulation for clustering. This is a visual example. So what is clustering? It's when you have a mega project with hundreds of interactions. So what do you want to do? You want to cluster them in similarities because each of these bubbles can be handled as a project or as a program independently if they are in the same, I would say, department, same area, because they share similarities. Let me give you one very quick example at my time at the UN. When I was at the UN in Juba, the capital of South Sudan, and we were doing several construction projects because this was my area. And for example, you need to construct a school and you need to construct a hospital. So what we did, it's just a very simple example. Instead of having procurement for bricks, and cement on both of them, we created a procurement piece that bought for all these 11 projects we were doing that. And these optimize the use of our resources and allow us to speed up the delivery, because one of the key aspects of doing projects in the humanitarian sector, it's not the project itself. The project is very simple. The problem is the conditions. For example, build a house in South Sudan, it's simple. But when I tell you that South Sudan, there is no electricity, and let me repeat, there is no electricity in the country. It's all based on generator, and there is no water and there is no sewage in the country. Then it turns more complex, right? Access is very different, and this is what brings more complexity to this project. So by doing that, we speed up the process. And one of the ways of doing this is, if you allow me, I know this is a talk, but I need to spend 30 seconds giving you a quick masterclass of what is design structure matrix. And this was created by MIT in the mid-2000s to handle these complex projects. And I did this yesterday, so I apologize because I tried to do my best to explain this to you, but imagine this network, okay? And imagine that B, C, A, they can be tasks but they can be projects and they can be programs, okay? So imagine one element. So imagine that B drives to A and F, B drives to C, C to D, A to D, and there is one tricky thing. Did you see what happens between D and E? If we go to the traditional PDM method, critical path method, right? Or if you want, for example, I worked many years in the development team of Microsoft projects in the 2000s. This will give an error because it will say this is a loop, right? Because who is the predecessor? It's E or D. There is a two connection, means they need to be together. It's a mutual dependency. So what is DSM? When Professor Eppinger did that, he did this. This is a matrix where he repeats in columns and rows the same elements, A, B, C. And so what happens? He notes, did you see that between the line E and the line D, there is a purple dot? And between the line D and line E, there is also a purple dot. It's a same way of representing the system using what? Using colors and using this sense of bubbles. If you don't want to use the bubbles, and this is what is, I will not talk today, you can use numbers, and numbers tells the strength of that connection. Number one is a low strength. Number three is a more strong connection. Number -1 is a strong disconnection, means one does not help the other. And by doing this, let me show you a real one. This is a real one. This is an MIT article I will share with the conference about real estate development. So I found this just to show you. This is a complex real estate development. And did you see that all the black dots are exactly the same activity in rows and columns? And all the connections. Did you see number one, number two? And this is what drives the algorithm. So what do we want by using this? It's a very simple thing we want. We want to do this. We want to take a project that is working like this. Imagine these connections between the elements of your mega project. So what do you want? This is the cluster. You need to understand. These two, green and red, are absolutely the same. If you want to take a photo of this and go home and try to plot the dots, you will see that I'm doing exactly the same connections. What's the difference? I'm changing the order and the sequence on the top in order to make this clustering. And of course, you will ask me, Ricardo, but how do you do that in complex projects? You do this by two mechanisms and two algorithms called looping search method, and the other one is function search method. They are algorithms, and this drives me to the third piece. So for you to understand these hidden connections among elements of your mega projects, you must talk about technology. And you must talk. And what are my comments on technology? First one, on here on the left side. One thing that I want you all to be aware of, we need to distinguish what is a hype and what is reality. Because it's very common that we talk, oh, everything will be different, everything is changing, everything is algorithm, everything is AI. It's definitely, trust me, it's not like that. So you just need to understand this. It's not exactly like that. So what we need to use clustering and genetic algorithms. And I will not discuss this because Jan and several other speakers spoke about that yesterday. But on the top of that, we need to talk about mechanisms like system dynamics and all this technology. So the connection between technology, governance, and programmatic approach is what will make you able to manage this complex effort. However, there is one final key element that I want to close. And I know we heard this probably during yesterday all the time. That even if you implement a massive and outstanding governance, if you have the best tools for programmatic approach and you use absolutely cutting edge technology, it's absolutely impossible for you to succeed without having people. And one thing that yesterday morning, just before we start, I was talking to His Highness the Prince, and we were talking about one thing. There is one massive asset that the Saudi society will have with the Vision 2030. And it's not NEOM, and it's not these projects. It's the capability of the Saudi people to go forever, above and beyond. Is this learning capability, not to implement Vision 2030, but Vision 2040, 50, whatever, because this will be the most permanent asset for the society in the future. And this is why I want to finish with that. So the best way to manage is to balance these three things and empower as much as you can the people you have. So thank you very much for your time. It's really an honor to be here. And these are my contact information. Thank you very much. Okay, thank you.